with you to review the latest pro wrestling news and results. It's part of wrestling reigns, baby! Yeah! It's Friday, and you know what that means. It's time for Versus, leading into the weekend right here at Wrestling Reigns, baby! Impact versus Ring of Honor once again from last night. Both shows I thought were quite good. A little bit above the norm for sure. Actually, quite a bit above the norm for sure. But before we get into that, let's talk about what we got for the rest of the weekend here. We got Laying the Rant Down tomorrow on Saturday. And then sometime into the weekend, maybe into Monday, we are also going to be rolling back with a very special edition of Versus one more time this week. We're going to do another one on I'm thinking probably Sunday, but I am pretty busy on Sunday, so it might roll into Monday, which would be fine because there is no really big events this weekend to do a Mega Rant on Monday. So instead, let's do a Mega Rant on Versus SmackDown from tonight in Madison Square Garden against AEW's Collision with that main event of CM Punk, Samoa Joe, and we also got FTR and Bullet Club Gold. Pretty loaded show on both ends for WWE and AEW. So we are going to go back and take a look at them via Versus sometime, like I said, late weekend, maybe into Monday potentially. So let's get into everything from this weekend Impact and Ring of Honor. First and foremost, let's talk a little bit, just an overview on each show, as we usually do. Impact, I think this week was definitely an above average episode, maybe one of the better Impact weekly episodes in a while, because every successful trope of quality wrestling television program was here on this show for the most part this week. We had a strong opening match. We had a strong main event. We had an angle in the middle of the show that was pretty significant. And in between it, there was a lot of storyline development. Decent in-ring generally. Otherwise, some decent promos to build things for Slammiversary, which is just something like 10 days or less from now on pay-per-view, so that's right around the corner for Impact. Over on Ring of Honor, one thing that was really nice to see this week on Ring of Honor was that the run time on this show was at the same level and the same length as Impact for the most part. Impact this week had 1 hour and 26 minutes of content. Ring of Honor this week had 1 hour and 33 minutes of content. So I'm hoping that that's what Ring of Honor kind of becomes. It's around about an hour and a half of content each week. It goes a lot faster. This week there seemed to be a little less of the let's just throw squash match or glorified squash match in there, 2 and 3 minute matches. There was some for sure, but it wasn't as heavy as other weeks. There was some more promos mixed in the middle of things. And generally I felt like there was a little bit more of an effort to kind of separate, like I talked about a few weeks ago in a rant, about separating Ring of Honor away from the formatting of, for instance, the former AEW Dark or AEW Dark Elevation. I think they need to break away from that format, which was typically short matches, multiple matches, very little in between, no real angles, very little promos, things of that nature. Ring of Honor is starting to get better with this. I think another part of the show with Ring of Honor this week was this was probably the entire episode taped before Collision and not doing that half before and half after Collision stuff. I think that helped a little bit too with the crowd reactions on this show. So that was something to consider going down the road if they're going to continue to do this for Ring of Honor. But I definitely liked how there was a little bit Not so long in the tooth on this show. At an hour, 30 minutes, works for me. Ring of Honor also, similar to Impact, had a pretty strong opener. I'll talk about the main event on Ring of Honor in a little bit. There was a surprise return on the main event as well, so there was that. I'll get into my feelings a little bit more on this main event on Ring of Honor as we roll into the head-to-head quarter-hour battle. That is versus right now. Let's go. All right, quarter hour one on Impact. Saw Eddie Edwards in there against Frankie Kazarian in this feud that has been going on for quite some time in Impact, and sounds like it's going to culminate with yet another match with these guys at Slammiversary. This was the second match of a series of 3, and in this one, Edwards did get the victory over Kazarian. There was a lot of interference by Alicia in this match, so that kind of was the main takeaway from this one was the interference by Alicia Edwards that costed Kazarian the match. So, the Slammiversary, I don't know, maybe they'll put some sort of gimmick on this rubber match between these guys that's set for the pay-per-view. Time will tell, but the in-ring has been good in this program, no question about it. Over on Ring of Honor to kick off the night of action on that show, we had a fantastic opener between Commander and Gringo Loco. Commander won with a couple of moves near the end of the match that I have not seen him really pull off often. One was like a twisted bliss kind of maneuver from the top rope to the floor onto Gringo Loco as Gringo Loco was standing. And then there also was the finish, which was basically a double springboard into a 450 off the top rope areas. Impressive as hell. Commander going over Gringo Loco in this really hot opener for Ring of Honor. So, pulling out the trusty pen here, what would be my pick for the first quarter hour win? Both shows had really good openers this week. I am going to go with the Ring of Honor just slightly above Impact for the opener battle. Going back to Impact, quarter hour 2, Chris Sabin had a promo. Didn't have too much to it. It was more just directed towards Lio Rush. They are official for Slammiversary for that X Division Championship. Then as a rebuttal, they had Lio Rush cut a promo in the back as well. Nick Aldis got involved in that also, and just emphasized to Lio Rush that they weren't best friends. They really didn't care for each other much, but they are in this match, in the main event, together against the Motor City Machine Guns, and it's imperative that they win this match. So definitely, I can't say they really teased anything between these guys. I don't foresee them having a match down the road, but it was kind of clear by this promo that there wasn't going to be a regular joining up of a team with these guys. So it makes a little more sense compared to what we saw last week, where it gave that impression that perhaps they were kind of in cahoots together and going to be forming more of a permanent team. That was made adamantly clear via this interview that was not going to happen. Kazarian also cut a promo following that loss to Eddie Edwards on the opener here, and just basically challenged him at Slammiversary. So we're going to see that rubber match at the pay-per-view. Also, we saw a quick match. There wasn't a whole lot to it. This actually rolled a little bit into the next quarter hour, but Sami Callihan and Rich Swann were in that tag title multi-man match over the team of Champagne Singh and Mahabali Shera. Like I said, not a whole lot to this match, just to showcase them going into that tag title multi-man match at the pay-per-view. Over on Ring of Honor, we had Big Bill and Lee Moriarty doing an interview in the back. I thought Big Bill cut a pretty good promo here for once. You don't see that often from him. Thought it was not bad. They were building up their match with the boys later on the show. Then we got Daniel Garcia over Christopher Daniels in a very solid technical match. Garcia won actually pretty handily here. I wouldn't call it a squash full out, but it was a competitive squash for sure with Garcia and Daniels. I will go Ring of Honor on this one again, just because the in-ring just was stronger than Impact at this point. Moving into the next quarter hour on Impact, we were kind of wrapping up things with the Callahan and Rich Swann match. We also got to look back at the BTI match, which was Dirty Dangle and somebody, and Santino came out, cut a promo on Dangle. He Slater, then jumped Dangle, laid him out with his finish. We didn't get a Dirty Dangle vignette that was very long-winded, not very entertaining. I didn't really get the point of even airing this. This seemed very amateur, just weird. But yeah, it was what it was on Impact. Also, we got some introductions for the next match in the following quarter hour. Not a whole lot to talk about in this quarter hour on Impact. Over on Ring of Honor, quarter hour 3, Willie Mack did an interview in the back, promoting and pushing ahead on the 6-way scramble match that we got coming up in this show, which was pretty good. It was Brian Cage, Willie Mack, Josh Woods, Dalton Castle, Trent Seven, and Shane Taylor in a 6-way scramble. I hope Ring of Honor does more stuff like this. It's going to make them stand out a little more week to week here. Then going back to this same quarter hour on Ring of Honor, we had the Gates of Agony in there over Darius Martin and Action Andretti. This was solid work. I kind of feel like it's time to push the Gates of Agony in a program with the Lucha Brothers. And this, I think it's time. In fact, I think maybe it might even be time to give them the tag titles. I don't know. They looked really good in this match, and what can you say? Martin and Andretti have been pushed up and down a little bit in the Ring of Honor band, so they have credibility here. Good match. A good, solid match. Didn't get a lot of time, but I enjoyed it. And I have to give, once again, Ring of Honor on the nod for the third quarter hour. Just the in-ring had a lot more to it. There really wasn't much to say with the in-ring on Impact. There wasn't really anything in that quarter hour other than maybe the last minute or two of a finish of the previous match. Quarter hour 4 on Impact. Jonathan Gresham over Alan Angels. Good match, I thought. And also afterwards, more or less, Alan Angels split from the design. He told Diener to get out of his face. He shook the hand of Jonathan Gresham. They walked off together. So we're going to be seeing something come out of this down the road. I think there's I don't know if it's a Ultimate X match or a 6-way scramble at pay-per-view at Slammiversary involving both of these guys, I believe. Over on Ring of Honor, we had a couple matches. We had the Righteous and Stu Grayson in a squash match that didn't go more than, I think, 2 or 3 minutes. And then we also had Big Bill and Lee Moriarty against the Tate Twins, or also known as Dalton Castle's boys. Not a bad match. It was kind of glorified squashiness to a degree. So comparatively to the Impact match with Alan Angels and Jonathan Gresham, as well as there was one thing I forgot to mention on that quarter hour Impact. There was a ABC promo where the Rascals interrupted and wanted to get in that multi-man tag title match at Slammiversary. There appears to be a match that's coming up, I think, next week on Impact, where Chris Bay is going to wrestle Zach Wentz, and if Wentz beats him, they get put in that tag title match. So overall on this quarter hour battle, I am going to go with Impact for that fourth quarter hour. So hour end, Ring of Honor 3, Impact 1. We'll see what the next hour looks at here as we move to quarter hour 5. This was a hot quarter hour for Impact for sure. A pretty good promo with Deonna Purrazzo and Trinity. Trinity was just accusing Deonna of sandbagging a little bit last week when she took her time coming into the ring to save Trinity from a beatdown by Giselle Shaw and company. So they got that heat going on a little bit for that match at the pay-per-view. Also, PCO won a handicap match over the Good Hands. Scott D'Amore was out there doing commentary. Afterwards, got in the ring and got involved a little bit with one of the Good Hands. That brought out Bully Ray, He distracted D'Amore and distracted PCO for a moment as Steve Macklin attacked in the ring. They handcuffed Scott D'Amore to the ring apron or the ring ropes, and then laid out PCO, took him to the back of Center Stage Atlanta, and in a pretty wild angle here, they not only poured supposed battery acid in the mouth of PCO, and good on the effects. I think PCO probably had some Alka-Seltzer in his mouth as they poured what was apparently battery acid. Obviously, that's not the case, but poured it in his mouth. His mouth got all kind of bubbly and stuff, like there was something going on there. And then after that, they poured lighter fluid on the back of PCO, and they set his ass on fire, literally. His back end, his back on fire. He runs off, out of camera. Obviously, the fire didn't last long, fortunately, but this was a pretty eye-opening angle for Impact. I think they need to consider doing more kind of extreme angles like this, maybe with the influence of Tommy Dreamer and other ECW alumni. Maybe they can get kind of that same vibe a little bit that ECW got back in the day with the extreme angles. We just saw, I think it was just last week, the very adult angle I would consider with Killer Kelly and Masha Slamovich, almost like a lesbian tryst angle. So yeah, I kind of like this direction that Impact's going in. Hopefully they can continue to kind of go push the envelope a little bit, be a little more adult content stuff. I think that would really help them. And this angle was definitely very adult in nature, where a guy was set on fire, and yeah, good stuff. Over on ROH, Athena over, you might get this name wrong, Celicia Sparks. I do not remember this, but the announcer said that she used to be in Ring of Honor. I guess she's from Canada, had some visa issues that kept her from coming back to Ring of Honor. For what it is, I hope she's a regular now, because I thought she looked pretty good in there with Athena. Athena did handily win this one and continuing her win streak. And then we got a weird little segment where Tony Nese was supposed to wrestle JD Drake. He comes out talking his gimmick about not wanting to do the match, but wanting to basically do like a workout session with everybody in the crowd. That brings Mark Briscoe out. Briscoe gets in the middle, says he's gotten added to this match, so it's a three-way. Briscoe wins pretty handily with a Jay Driller on Tony Nese. I am going to go with Impact for this quarter hour, although there was some pretty good in-ring on Ring of Honor. I thought this angle with PCO and Bully Ray and Steve Macklin was pretty good. I thought the Deanna promo with Trinity was good as well, so there you go. Rolling back to Impact for quarter hour 6. Giselle Shaw went over Courtney Rush. They're setting something up with these two tag teams. I could really give a shit less, frankly. Also, there was a Kenny King and Shelton Jean segment in the back when Joe Hendry showed up, kind of ridiculing King some more. There was a few ladies in this segment that were trying to give Kenny King money like he's still a stripper. So they're razzing on that whole angle from last week, excuse me. And Yuya Uemura showed up in this as well. So I'm guessing we're going to see a tag with Henry Uemura against Kenny King and Shelton G next week on Impact. Over on Ring of Honor, a pretty solid quarter hour, I have to say. So they talked about Eddie Kingston winning the New Japan Strong Championship from Kenta at the Independence Day shows this past week in Tokyo at Korakuen Hall. And like I said, I didn't do a mega rant on those shows, but really check them out. They were both pretty solid stuff if you're into New Japan, and if you're into hardcore wrestling, deathmatch stuff, that would be your jam, folks. But Eddie Kingston then did a promo after they showed the clips from Tokyo. He talked about wanting to face Claudio Castagnoli at Death Before Dishonor, which is right around the corner in about, I think, 2 weeks from today, as a matter of fact. And they really haven't set too much up here, but this segment did set up the main event at Death Before Dishonor. as Kingston explained that because he is in the G1 tournament that starts like on July 15th, he's unable to make it to Death Before Dishonor, where he wanted to challenge Claudio Castagnoli again for the Ring of Honor World Championship. Because he's not there, he suggested in the promo that Mark Briscoe step up and be the man that he can be and challenge Claudio for the Ring of Honor Championship. After that, they cut to Renee Young, who is with Mark Briscoe in an interview in the back, where Briscoe basically says he's up for the challenge. Claudio shows up, they get face-to-face, pretty good promo back and forth. I thought this was an excellent setup and start to the main event at Death Before Dishonor, which is Mark Briscoe and Claudio for the Ring of Honor World title. Then we also got in this quarter-hour segment a relatively quick match with Diamante, Vanessa Craven. I think they're pushing Diamante to be the next challenger to Athena. I guess we'll see what happens. I don't know if she'll win, but I think they're positioning her to be the next big challenger because she was pretty handily won over Vanessa Craven here, a pretty well-known name in the independent scene as well. This is good. I liked it. So I will go Ring of Honor for this quarter hour for sure. Last half hour time, quarter hour 7. Impact really didn't have a lot to say. Well, they had a lot to say. There wasn't much else in this quarter hour. We had all the runners for next week, all the promotion of what's ahead for Slammiversary, what's ahead for next week. We also got the main event entrances for the tag match. And there really wasn't too much else to say in this quarter hour, unfortunately. Over on Ring of Honor, there was an excellent 6-way scramble match that saw Brian Cage win over Willie Mack, Josh Woods, Dalton Castle, Trent Seven, and Shane Taylor. Cage got the win over Willie Mack in a roll-up of all things. And the action, there was a lot of high spots, there was a lot of dives to the outside. Really good pace to this match. Didn't have a lot of time. I think it clocked it at maybe 8 or 9 minutes of time or something like that. So wasn't much to it, but it was still, compared to Impact, which really had nothing other than promotional stuff. I think maybe the Kenny King, Shelton Jean, Joe Henry stuff maybe rolled into this quarter hour a little bit. And then we got the main event entrances as well. Just really not much to it. So I definitely will give Ring of Honor the nod on that one. And we get to main event time for both shows. Quarter hour 8. Impact had Lio Rush and Nick Aldis in there. Those are both the challengers for each of the singles titles that the Motor City Machine Guns held. They took on the Machine Guns here in a nice preview match for the pay-per-view. Thought Aldis looked good in there against Shelley. And Lio Rush certainly looked great in there against Chris Sabin. Finish came when basically there was some brawling outside with Aldis and Alex Shelley. Lio Rush took advantage in the ring. I think he low-blowed Sabin or something to that degree. And then got that frog splash on Chris Sabin to win the match for the heels in, I have to say, a really good main event on Impact. Ring of Honor had a interesting mixed 6-man match. This was the team of the Kingdom and the returning Layla Hirsch to take on and defeat the team of Trish Adora in the Infantry. So before the match occurred, Maria said she wasn't going to be in the match, and this was her replacement. Hirsch came back. She has not been on AEW programming for quite a long time. Looks a little thicker too. I don't know what that's about, but not necessarily in shape, just bigger, like put on some weight. And I just couldn't get into this match for some reason. I feel like they really should have flipped the 6-man scramble match as the main event. I thought maybe that would have been a little bit more effective, but I think they have, similar to Diamante, they have visions here of making Layla Hirsch really stand out as a contender to Athena's Women's Championship, as evident by this match, because Layla Hirsch did go over at the end for the armbar submission on Trish Adora. They also had Hirsch cut a promo after the match in the back to end the show, where basically she said she's ready to dominate the division and nobody can beat her because she's a real fighter and nobody else is. And that did it for Ring of Honor for the week. I am going to go with Impact's main event for the last quarter hour, because I thought that was a really, really strong main event for Impact standards. So taking a look at things this week, it looks like we have just barely Ring of Honor taking it once again, 5 quarter-hour segments to 3 on Impact. It's very close this week, just like last week. And we'll see if Ring of Honor keeps up this format, tightening things up in about an hour and a half. It helps a lot with the flow of that show. I always feel like Impact, for every week, just kind of flies by because there's just so much stuff going on the show. So overall, good week of Impact, good week of Ring of Honor. Liked them both. Very close call this week on the head-to-head battle known as Versus. Okay, see everybody back here this weekend for some industry news. And who knows what else as part of laying the rant down. And like I said, have decided we are going to roll back and do another episode of Versus, a bonus episode this week as we look head-to-head with 2 major 2-hour shows coming up tonight and tomorrow. That is SmackDown versus Collision. See y'all in the key wrestling rants.